Ambassador Sarah Chen took a deep breath, straightening her crisp navy suit as she prepared to make history. After decades of searching the stars, humanity had finally made contact with an alien civilization. The Zarthak, a species of tall, willowy beings with iridescent skin, had agreed to this momentous first meeting on neutral ground, a space station orbiting a distant, uninhabited planet. As the airlock hissed open, Sarah plastered on her most welcoming smile. She had trained for years for this moment, studying every scrap of information about the Zarthak that humanity's best xenolinguists and anthropologists could piece together. Nothing could have prepared her for the sight that greeted her. The Zarthak delegation glided into the room, their movements fluid and graceful. Their leader, a being Sarah's briefing identified as High Counselor Excelfor, towered over her by at least 2 feet. Its skin shimmered with patterns of light that seemed to convey emotions beyond the capacity of human expression. "Greetings, High Counselor Excelfor," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "On behalf of the United Earth Government, I welcome you in peace and friendship." Excelfor's skin rippled with what Sarah hoped was a positive response. The alien's voice, when it spoke, was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We are honored to meet the representatives of Earth. May our 2 species find harmony in the cosmic dance." Sarah beamed, feeling the surge of relief. So far, so good. She extended her hand, as she had been taught in countless simulations. "In the tradition of my people, I offer you a handshake as a sign of our peaceful intentions." The moment her hand touched Excelfor's, everything went wrong. The alien's eyes widened in what could only be described as sheer terror. It yanked its hand away with a shriek that set Sarah's teeth on edge. The rest of the Zarthak delegation recoiled, their skin flashing warning patterns of red and black. What are you?" Excelfor gasped, cradling its hand as if injured. Sarah froze, her mind racing. What had she done wrong? I don't understand. Did I offend you somehow?" One of the other Zarthak, its skin pulsing with agitated yellow swirls, stepped forward. "Your strength, it's impossible. Are you some kind of war form?" Sarah blinked in confusion. "War form? No, I'm just a normal human. I barely even work out." This statement seemed to cause even more distress among the aliens. They huddled together, their lights flickering in what Sarah assumed was rapid communication. She stood there, hand still awkwardly extended, feeling like she had just failed humanity in the most spectacular way possible. After what felt like an eternity, Excelfor turned back to her. Its voice was tighter now, more controlled. "Ambassador Chen, we appreciate your attempt at peaceful contact. However, we were not prepared for the intensity of your species. We must cut this meeting short to reassess the situation." Before Sarah could formulate a response, the Zarthak were already retreating, practically tripping over themselves in their haste to get back to their ship. The airlock sealed behind them with a final damning hiss. Sarah stood there, alone in the empty meeting room, trying to process what had just happened. She had shaken hands with an alien and somehow terrified an entire species in the process. As she reached for her comm unit to report this disaster to her superiors, she couldn't help but wonder, what kind of misunderstandings would this lead to? And how on Earth, or off it, was humanity going to fix this mess? Little did she know, her innocent handshake was about to spark a galactic legend about the terrifying strength of these newcomers to the cosmic stage, a legend that would take on a life of its own in the days and years to come. 6 months after the disastrous first contact, the United Earth Government was still scrambling to salvage interstellar relations. The Zarthak had spread wild tales about humanity's monstrous strength and uncontrollable power, leaving diplomatic channels in shambles. It was in this tense climate that Dr. Ileana Patel, Earth's foremost xenoanthropologist, proposed a radical solution, an exchange program. "If we can't convince them we're not dangerous from a distance," she argued before a panel of skeptical officials, "then we need to show them up close." One human student, enrolled in their most prestigious academy, a chance to see us as we really are. And that's how Zhou Chen, the 18-year-old daughter of the infamous Handshake Ambassador, found herself standing before the towering crystal spires of the Galactic Institute of Higher Learning on Zarthak Prime. She clutched her single bag of belongings, trying not to gawk at the dizzying array of alien life forms scurrying, slithering, and hovering around her. A Zarthak official, its skin flickering with nervous purple patterns, approached her. "Greetings, honored guest Zhou Chen. I am Coordinator Vexley. Welcome to our humble institution." The alien's voice quavered slightly, as if expecting Zhou to suddenly sprout fangs and claws. Zhou smiled, remembering her extensive briefing. No sudden movements, no loud noises, and absolutely no physical contact. "Thank you, Coordinator Vexley. I'm honored to be here and excited to learn alongside your students." Vexley's skin shifted to a cautious blue. "Yes, well, we've made special arrangements for your stay. If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your reinforced quarters." As they walked, or in Vexley's case, glided, through the campus, Zhou couldn't help but notice the wide berth other beings gave her. Students from a dozen different species pressed themselves against walls or ducked into doorways as she passed. She caught snatches of whispered conversations. "Is that the human? I heard they can bend durasteel with their bare hands. Do you think it's true they drink acid to stay alive?" Zhou sighed inwardly. This was going to be harder than she thought. Her reinforced quarters turned out to be a room that looked like it had been designed to contain a rampaging beast rather than house a student. The walls were thick, the furniture bolted down, and there was even what appeared to be a force field generator by the door. "We hope these accommodations will be sufficient," Vexley said, skin now a mix of apologetic green and nervous yellow. "Classes begin tomorrow. Your schedule has been adjusted to minimize potential incidents." After Vexley left, Zhou flopped onto the unnecessarily sturdy bed and stared at the ceiling. "Way to go, Mom," she muttered. "You just had to shake hands with the alien." The next morning, Zhou steeled herself for her first class, Introductory Xenobiology. As she entered the lecture hall, the cacophony of alien chatter died instantly. Hundreds of eyes, stalks, and sensory organs swiveled to focus on her. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Not that Zhou would dare make any knife-related gestures at the moment. The professor, a gelatinous being that quivered with each word, began the lecture in a wavering voice. Today, class, we have a unique opportunity. We'll be observing a real live human in their natural academic state. Please remember the safety protocols. No sudden movements, no flash photography, and absolutely no provoking the human." Zhou raised her hand, trying to ignore the collective flinch that rippled through the room. "Excuse me, Professor. I'm not here to be observed. I'm here to learn, just like everyone else." The professor's entire form jiggled in surprise. It speaks. "I mean, of course, honored guest Chen. Perhaps you'd like to share some insights about human biology with the class." Seizing the opportunity, Zhou stood up, eliciting another room-wide flinch, and walked to the front. She took a deep breath and launched into the speech she had prepared for just such an occasion. "Hello, everyone. I know there are a lot of rumors about humans, but I'm here to tell you that we're not so different from you. We're not super strong or invincible. We're just people. We laugh, we cry, we make mistakes. We're here to learn and grow, just like all of you." As she spoke, she could see the tension in the room slowly beginning to ebb. Some of the alien students leaned forward, curiosity replacing fear in their varied expressions. But just as Zhou thought she might be making progress, disaster struck. A holographic display behind her flickered to life, showing a diagram of the human circulatory system. Zhou turned to look at it, gesturing as she explained. "See, we have hearts that pump blood, just like many of you. We're not so." Her hand passed through the hologram, disrupting it. To the alien students, it looked as if she had casually swiped through a solid object. The room erupted into chaos. By the cosmic egg, one student shrieked, "It can phase through matter." As panic spread and the professor desperately tried to restore order, Zoe put her head in her hands. It was going to be a very long semester. After the disastrous xenobiology lecture, Zoe had hoped things would calm down. She couldn't have been more wrong. As she navigated her way through the twisting crystal corridors of the Galactic Institute, she found herself at the center of a swirling storm of rumors, each more outlandish than the last. By lunchtime, half the student body was convinced she could walk through walls, while the other half debated whether her phase-shifting abilities were offensive or defensive in nature. Zoe sighed as she entered the cafeteria, a cavernous space filled with floating platforms to accommodate the various gravitational needs of the diverse student body. As she approached the food synthesizers, a hush fell over the room. Hundreds of alien eyes watched her every move. Zoe tried to ignore them as she punched in her order, a simple peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The machine hummed, and a moment later her lunch materialized. She took a bite, savoring the taste of home, when a gasp rippled through the crowd. A brave molluscoid student slithered forward, its eye stalks trembling. "Excuse me, honored human," it burbled, "but are you aware that you're consuming high-grade molecular acid?" Zoe blinked. "What? No, it's just a sandwich." The molluscoid skin paled. But the synthesizer clearly showed it contained a substance called peanut butter. "Our databases indicate this is a highly corrosive compound used in human industrial processes." Before Zoe could explain, chaos erupted. Students scrambled to evacuate the cafeteria, some crying out about toxic spills and chemical warfare. In the commotion, Zoe's sandwich was knocked from her hand. It landed with a soft plop on the floor, causing nearby aliens to scatter in terror. "Wait," Zoe called out, but her voice was lost in the pandemonium. She groaned, realizing this misunderstanding would only add to her fearsome reputation. Her next class, comparative alien physics, proved to be equally eventful. The professor, a being composed entirely of swirling gases contained within a transparent suit, was discussing the effects of different planetary gravities on physical development. "Now, class," the professor's voice crackled through a speaker, "we'll demonstrate the effects of high-gravity environments. This weight simulator is set to replicate the crush of a Class 5 heavy world, nearly twice standard gravity." A hulking, four-armed alien student volunteered, clearly eager to show off. As soon as it stepped into the simulator field, its knees buckled. It managed 3 laborious steps before signaling defeat. The professor nodded approvingly. "As you can see, even species adapted to higher gravities struggle in these conditions. Now, let's have our human guest try." Zoe hesitated, then stepped forward. She knew Earth was classified as a death world due to its higher-than-average gravity, but surely it couldn't be that bad. As she entered the simulator, she braced herself for crushing pressure. To her surprise, she felt only a mild increase in weight. It was noticeable, sure, but nothing she couldn't handle after years of helping her grandmother lug groceries up 5 flights of stairs. Zoe walked easily across the simulator, even doing a little hop at the end to show it was no big deal. The silence that followed was deafening. The professor's gaseous form swirled in agitation. "Impossible," it wheezed. "The simulator must be malfunctioning." But a quick diagnostic showed the machine was working perfectly. The implication slowly dawned on the class. This human, this unassuming alien exchange student, could casually stroll in conditions that would cripple most species. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Did you see that? It's like the gravity didn't even affect her. I heard humans can survive in the vacuum of space. No wonder they're so dangerous. They must come from some kind of hell planet." Zoe wanted to explain that Earth's gravity wasn't really that extreme, that humans had a wide range of physical capabilities, and that she was far from the strongest example of her species. But looking at the awe and terror on the faces, and other sensory organs, around her, she realized it was useless. Her actions, no matter how mundane to her, were only reinforcing the galactic legend of humanity's power. As she left the classroom, Zoe overheard a conversation that made her heart sink. "I'm telling you, it's all a cover-up. These exchange students are really an advanced scout for a human invasion force. But they seem so peaceful. That's how they get you. Lull you into a false sense of security, then bam, they'll crush us all with their bare hands." Zoe quickened her pace, her mind racing. She had come here to dispel myths about humanity, but everything she did seemed to make things worse. As she rounded a corner, lost in thought, she collided with a floating drone carrying a stack of datapads. The collision was minor. The drone barely wobbled. But to the watching aliens, it looked like Zoe had casually batted aside a half-ton of metal and circuitry. The hallway cleared in seconds, alarms began to blare, and Zoe found herself surrounded by the shimmering fields of containment drones. As she was escorted back to her reinforced room for everyone's safety, Zoe couldn't help but wonder, how could she possibly fix this interstellar misunderstanding when her very existence seemed to terrify her alien classmates? Little did she know, her greatest challenge and opportunity was yet to come in the form of a simple cup of coffee. After a week of unintentional chaos, Zoe was desperate for a taste of normalcy. She missed Earth, her family, and most of all, her morning cup of coffee. The Galactic Institute's food synthesizers could replicate a passable version of most Earth cuisines, but they drew the line at caffeine. Apparently, the stimulant was classified as a dangerous substance in most of the known galaxy. But Zoe had come prepared. Hidden in the false bottom of her luggage was a small stash of premium coffee beans and a compact manual grinder. She had been hesitant to use them, given the pandemonium that seemed to follow her every move. But after another night of tossing and turning on her unnecessarily reinforced bed, she decided it was worth the risk. Early the next morning, before most of the alien students had begun their daily routines, Zoe snuck down to the communal kitchen area. She ground the beans as quietly as possible, the rich aroma filling the air. Using a small portable heating element, she managed to boil water and brew a perfect cup of drip coffee. As she took her first sip, Zoe closed her eyes in bliss. For a moment, she could almost imagine she was back home, getting ready for a normal day of school. Her reverie was shattered by a high-pitched shriek. Zoe's eyes snapped open to see a gelatinous sphere student hovering in the kitchen doorway, its translucent body pulsating with alarm. "Intruder alert. The human is weaponizing unknown chemicals," the student burbled, its voice modulator rising to a panicked pitch. Before Zoe could explain, alarms began blaring throughout the institute. Red lights flashed, and containment fields shimmered into existence, sealing off sections of the building. In the distance, she could hear the heavy tread of the campus security drones approaching. "Wait, no, it's just coffee," Zoe called out, but it was too late. The kitchen was swarming with a dizzying array of alien security personnel, each more heavily armed and armored than the last. "Step away from the chemical weapon and keep your devastating appendages where we can see them," commanded a hovering orb that seemed to be in charge. Zoe carefully set down her mug and raised her hands. "This is all a big misunderstanding. I was just making a drink from my home planet. It's harmless, I swear." A spindly, multi-limbed alien in what looked like a hazmat suit inched forward, waving a complex scanning device over the mug. Its eye stalks widened in alarm. "Sir, the scans show high levels of an unknown stimulant compound. It's unlike anything in our databases." The security orb pulsed an angry red. "Unauthorized stimulants. Highly illegal. This could be a new form of combat drug. We must assume the human was preparing for some kind of berserker rage." Zoe groaned. This was getting out of hand fast. "Look, can I just show you? It's perfectly safe. For humans, it's just a morning pick-me-up." Before anyone could stop her, Zoe grabbed the mug and took a long, deliberate swig. The assembled aliens recoiled in horror, clearly expecting her to transform into some kind of battle-crazed monster. Instead, Zoe simply stood there, savoring the flavor. See, totally harmless. Delicious, actually. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then the kitchen erupted into frenzied activity. Some security personnel were calling for immediate evacuation of the entire facility. Others were demanding Zoe be placed in maximum containment. The scientist with the scanner was practically dancing with excitement, babbling about potential medical breakthroughs. In the midst of the chaos, Coordinator Vexley glided into the room, its skin a kaleidoscope of stressed-out colors. What in the name of the 7 moons is going on here? It took hours to sort out the mess. Zoe found herself in a high-security lab, surrounded by wide-eyed alien scientists, as she explained the cultural and chemical significance of coffee. She demonstrated the brewing process multiple times, each step documented with the kind of attention usually reserved for splitting atoms. Fascinating, murmured a quantum consciousness researcher, its thought matrix sparkling with interest. And you say this beverage is consumed daily by billions of humans? Zoe nodded. Pretty much. Some people even drink it multiple times a day. This revelation sent a new wave of excited chittering through the assembled aliens. Theories flew back and forth. Perhaps it's a form of ritual combat training. No, it must be how they maintain their incredible energy levels. Could this be the source of their reality phasing abilities? As the debate raged on, Zoe caught sight of her reflection in a polished surface. She looked tired, frustrated, and undercaffeinated. This whole situation was spiraling out of control, and she felt powerless to stop it. But then, an idea began to form. The aliens were fascinated by coffee, seeing it as some magical elixir of human power. Maybe, just maybe, she could use this misunderstanding to her advantage. If she could demystify coffee, perhaps she could start to demystify humanity as a whole. Clearing her throat, Zoe addressed the room. You know, on Earth, people often bond over coffee. It's a social drink, something we share with friends. Would anyone like to try a cup? The silence that followed was deafening. Aliens exchanged nervous glances, a mix of fear and curiosity evident in their varied expressions. Finally, a brave photosynthetic amoeboid stepped forward, its leaf-like appendages quivering slightly. I would be honored to partake in this human ritual. It photosynthesized softly. As Zoe began to prepare another batch of coffee, this time with an attentive alien audience, she allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't much, but it was a start. 1 cup at a time, she might just be able to bridge the gap between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. Little did she know, her innocent offer was about to spark a caffeine craze that would sweep across the stars, bringing with it new misunderstandings, wild rumors, and perhaps, just perhaps, a glimmer of true interstellar understanding. The great caffeine caper, as it came to be known, had an unexpected side effect. While it didn't exactly dispel the myths about human superpowers, it did make Zoe slightly more approachable in the eyes of her alien classmates. Curiosity began to outweigh fear, if only slightly. It was in this marginally improved atmosphere that Professor Xylith, the multi-limbed head of Xenophysical Education, approached Zoe after class one day. Honored Human Chen. Xylith chittered, mandibles clacking nervously. I have a proposition for you. Our curriculum includes study of various species' physical activities. Would you be willing to demonstrate some human sports? Zoe's face lit up. Finally, a chance to show that humans weren't all terrifying strength and inexplicable abilities. I'd love to. What did you have in mind? The next day, Zoe found herself standing before a mixed class of alien students on the Institute's adaptive recreation field. The surface could alter its composition to suit various gravitational needs and physical characteristics. Right now, it was set to Earth normal conditions. Today, Professor Xylith announced, Honored Human Chen will introduce us to the Earth sport of soccer or football, depending on regional terminology. Zoe stepped forward, a standard soccer ball in hand. Thanks, Professor. Soccer is a popular Earth sport that primarily uses the feet to maneuver a ball into a goal. She demonstrated some basic dribbling and passing techniques. The alien students watched with a mix of fascination and confusion. A brave hovering cephalopod raised a tentacle. Query: why use inferior lower appendages when manipulator limbs are available? Zoe smiled. It's part of the challenge. Using feet requires more skill and control. She then invited volunteers to try. What followed was a chaotic but hilarious attempt at an alien soccer match. The gelatinous spheres had an advantage in absorbing the ball, but struggled to propel it. The quantum consciousnesses kept phase shifting through the ball, while the photosynthetic amoeboids formed a living net that was less a defense and more a mobile goal. As Zoe watched the joyful mayhem, she felt a warmth in her chest. For the first time since arriving, she saw her alien classmates forgetting their fear of her, lost in the simple joy of play. But the real excitement came when she introduced basketball. The concept of jumping to put a ball through a high hoop was met with incredulous stares. "Impossible," exclaimed a silicon-based crystalline. "No species can defy gravity to such a degree without technological assistance." Zoe grinned. "Want to bet?" She took a few steps, dribbled, and leaped, easily sinking a basket. The assembled aliens went silent, then erupted in a cacophony of excited chirps, burbles, and electromagnetic pulses. "Great cosmic egg," Professor Xylith exclaimed. The legends of human flight capabilities were true. Zoe landed, laughing. No, it's not flight. It's just jumping. Lots of Earth animals can jump." But her words were lost in the excitement. Soon, theories were flying. Perhaps they manipulate local gravity fields. No, they must have micro-propulsion systems in their leg appendages. I bet it's a form of teleportation. They disappear from the ground and reappear in the air. As the aliens argued, a group of engineering students were already sketching plans for anti-gravity boots inspired by Zoe's incredible technology. The finale came with a demonstration of swimming. The adaptive field transformed into a pool, and Zoe dove in, showing off various strokes. She surfaced to find the entire class in an uproar. "It's amphibious too. Did you see how it propelled itself through the dihydrogen monoxide? Fascinating. I heard humans can breathe water. Look how long it stayed under." Zoe spit out some water, trying not to laugh. "Guys, humans can't breathe water. We just hold our breath." A gaseous entity student pulsed with disbelief. "Hold your breath? You mean you voluntarily stop your respiratory processes for fun?" "Well, when you put it that way," Zoe muttered, realizing how odd it must sound to species with different biological needs. As the class ended and the excited students filed out, still chattering about human athletic prowess, Professor Xylith approached Zoe. "Honored Human Chen, I must thank you. Today's class was most illuminating. Though I confess, I'm not sure whether to be impressed or terrified by your species' capabilities." Zoe sighed, wringing out her wet hair. "Professor, I promise you, there's nothing terrifying about humans. We're not superheroes or monsters. We're just people." Xylith's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Perhaps, but people who can fall great distances without harm, propel themselves through liquids, and apparently cease respiration at will. You must admit, from an outside perspective, it's rather daunting." As Zoe opened her mouth to argue further, a commotion from the far side of the field caught their attention. A group of students from various species were attempting to recreate her basketball jump, with predictably chaotic results. Anti-gravity fields were malfunctioning, impromptu rocket packs were misfiring, and at least one quantum consciousness appeared to have accidentally teleported itself into next week. "I should probably go help sort that out," Tylith chittered nervously. As the professor scuttled off to manage the chaos, Zoe couldn't help but laugh. She had wanted to show that humans weren't so different from other species. Instead, she'd sparked an interstellar sporting craze and probably a new field of cinephysics research. Still, As she watched aliens of all shapes and sizes attempting to dribble, shoot, and splash, she felt a glimmer of hope. They might not understand humans yet, but at least they were trying to emulate them. It was progress, of a sort. Zoe grabbed a towel and headed towards the locker rooms, already planning her next demonstration. Maybe tennis, or would the idea of deliberately propelling a small object at high speeds be too much for her alien classmates to handle? Whatever came next, one thing was certain. The Galactic Institute's physical education curriculum would never be the same again. The excitement from the sports demonstration had barely died down when Zoe found herself facing a new challenge. Xenogastronomy 101. This required course was designed to familiarize students with the dietary needs and culinary customs of various species. Zoe had been looking forward to it, hoping to finally find some common ground with her alien classmates. As she entered the classroom, which looked more like a futuristic kitchen, Professor Zorblax, a gelatinous being with multiple pseudopods and a chef's hat precariously balanced on its amorphous form, greeted the class. "Welcome, gastronomic explorers," Zorblax burbled enthusiastically. "Today we have a special treat. Our resident human will introduce us to an Earth delicacy. Honored Chen, the floor is yours." Zoe stepped forward, trying to ignore the way some students instinctively recoiled. "Thanks, Professor. I thought I'd share a favorite from my home. Tacos." She began assembling the ingredients, explaining each step. The alien students watched with a mixture of fascination and trepidation as she chopped vegetables, seasoned meat, or a reasonable alien substitute, and prepared the salsa. "And for those who like it spicy," Zoe added, reaching into her bag, "I brought some special hot sauce from home." She held up a small bottle of Supernova Scorcher, a sauce so potent it came with a liability waiver. The class collectively gasped. A crystalline entity raised a faceted appendage. Query: spicy refers to a sensation of heat, correct? But your concoction is at room temperature. How can it be hot? Zoe grinned. It's not about actual temperature. Spicy foods contain compounds that trigger heat receptors in our mouths. It's more of a chemical reaction than actual heat. This explanation caused a stir among the students. Whispers of chemical warfare and oral nerve agents rippled through the room. Professor Zorblax extended a pseudopod in curiosity. Fascinating. And humans willingly ingest these compounds. For pleasure. Zoe nodded, adding a dash of the sauce to her taco. Some of us love it. Watch. She took a big bite, savoring the explosion of flavors and the familiar burn of the hot sauce. Mmm, delicious. The room erupted into chaos. Alarms blared as environmental sensors detected the aerosolized capsaicin. Several gaseous entities condensed in shock, while a group of silicon-based life forms began to crystallize defensively. "Great galactic gastronomer," Professor Zorblax exclaimed, its gelatinous form rippling in agitation. "Honored Chen, are you all right? Do you require medical attention? Neutralizing agents." Zoe swallowed, confused by the uproar. "I'm fine. This is normal. It's just a little spicy." A hive mind student buzzed in alarm. The human's pain receptors must be malfunctioning. It's clearly suffering severe chemical burns. Before Zoe could protest, she found herself enveloped in a shimmering containment field. Hazmat-suited medical personnel swarmed into the room, wielding an array of intimidating devices. "Wait," Zoe called out. "I'm not hurt. This is just how some Earth foods taste." But her words were drowned out by the commotion. She watched helplessly as the lab was evacuated, her half-eaten taco treated like a biohazard. Hours later, after extensive scans and a thorough decontamination process, Zoe sat in the medical bay, trying to explain the concept of spicy food to a panel of bewildered cynobiologists. "So, let me understand this correctly," said Dr. Xlix, a tentacled being whose appendages were still trembling slightly. "Humans deliberately cultivate plants that produce toxic compounds, then intentionally consume them for enjoyment." Zoe nodded wearily. "Yes, but they're not toxic to us. Well, not in small quantities. Another scientist, a quantum probability cloud, flickered anxiously. But our scans showed your pain receptors activating. You were experiencing clear physiological distress. That's part of the appeal, Zoe tried to explain. It's like a controlled burn. A little bit of excitement for the taste buds. The scientists exchanged troubled looks. One of them muttered something that sounded suspiciously like masochistic Deathworlders. Just then, Professor Zorblax oozed into the room, looking somewhat deflated. Honored Chen, I must apologize for the chaos in class. Rest assured, we've contained the, hot sauce, and are studying it under strict quarantine protocols. Zoe couldn't help but laugh. Professor, it's really not necessary. Millions of humans eat spicy food every day. It's perfectly safe. Zorblax's form rippled skeptically. Perhaps for your species, but I'm afraid we'll have to permanently ban these capsaicin compounds from campus. The risk of accidental exposure to non-human life forms is simply too great. As Zoe opened her mouth to argue, a commotion in the hallway caught everyone's attention. A group of daring students, led by the same brave photosynthetic amoeboid who had first tried coffee, was demanding access to the quarantined hot sauce. But Professor, one of them was saying, if it grants humans their incredible pain resistance, imagine what it could do for interstellar medicine. Zoe buried her face in her hands, torn between laughter and frustration. Once again, her attempt to share human culture had spiraled into an interstellar incident. As the debate raged on about the potential benefits and dangers of Earth cuisine, she couldn't help but wonder, what if aliens ever discovered wasabi? Or better yet, ghost peppers? The thought almost made her smile. Almost. But first, she had to convince the medical staff that she didn't need to be kept under observation for self-inflicted chemical burns. It was going to be a long night. As she settled in for yet another round of explanations, Zoe made a mental note. Next time, stick to vanilla ice cream. Surely that couldn't be misinterpreted as a weapon of mass destruction, right? As the semester drew to a close, Zoe found herself at the center of a swirling maelstrom of rumors, theories, and thinly veiled panic. Despite her best efforts, every attempt to demystify humanity had only seemed to add fuel to the fire of galactic misunderstanding. The Galactic Institute was abuzz with wild speculations about human abilities. I heard they can regrow limbs. No, they can breathe in space. I bet they're actually a hive mind. Each human just a cell in a planet-sized organism. Zoe slumped in her chair in the common area, nursing a cup of synthesized, not-quite coffee. The events of the past few months played through her mind. The handshake incident, the gravity mishap, the great caffeine caper, the sports fiasco, and the hot sauce debacle. It all seemed so absurd in retrospect. Lost in thought, she didn't notice Professor Xylith approaching until the multi-limbed alien cleared its throat equivalent nervously. Honored Chen, a moment of your time, please. Zoe looked up, surprised. Of course, Professor. What can I do for you? Xylith's mandibles clicked anxiously. The faculty has been discussing your presence here at the Institute. Some feel that your odd, unique abilities pose too great a risk to continue the exchange program. Zoe's heart sank. Had all her efforts been for nothing? Was humanity doomed to be forever misunderstood by the galactic community? But Xylith wasn't finished. However, a growing number of us believe that we've been approaching this all wrong. We've been so focused on the extraordinary that we've missed the ordinary. So we'd like to propose something unprecedented. Intrigued, Zoe leaned forward. I'm listening. The next day, Zoe found herself standing on a makeshift stage in the Institute's grand auditorium. Before her was an assembly of not just students and faculty, but representatives from various alien species across the galaxy. Even a few members of the Galactic High Council were in attendance, their ceremonial robes shimmering with barely contained curiosity. Taking a deep breath, Zoe stepped up to the microphone. Greetings, everyone. Thank you for coming. Today, I'm not here to demonstrate any amazing feats or share any Earth secrets. I'm just here to talk about being human, the ordinary, everyday experience of it. And so, Zoe began to share. She talked about waking up groggy and craving that first cup of coffee, about the joy of a warm shower and the annoyance of forgetting to buy toothpaste. She described the satisfaction of solving a difficult problem in class and the frustration of rush hour traffic. She shared stories of family dinners, of laughing with friends, of falling in love and having her heart broken. She talked about the dreams that drove her and the fears that kept her up at night. As she spoke, she could see the audience's reactions shifting. The initial wariness gave way to curiosity, then to genuine interest. Aliens leaned forward in their seats, appendages raised with questions not about superhuman abilities, but about the minutiae of daily life on Earth. A quantum consciousness shimmered with inquiry. You mean humans require regular periods of unconsciousness? Fascinating. What do you dream about? A gelatinous sphere burbled excitedly. Tell us more about these movies. You create entire false realities for entertainment. Even a member of the High Council, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate suit, chimed in. This concept of love, it's not just for reproductive purposes. How curious. For hours, Zoe fielded questions, sharing the human perspective on everything from art and music to politics and philosophy. She found herself discussing topics she'd never even considered before, forced to really think about what it meant to be human. As the session wound down, Professor Zorblax oozed forward, its gelatinous form quivering with emotion. Honored Chen, I believe I speak for many when I say we owe you an apology. We've been so caught up in the idea of humans as some sort of superpowered species that we fail to see the beauty in your ordinariness. Zoe smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. Thank you, Professor. But I think we all have a lot to learn from each other. Every species here has its own unique perspective, its own ordinary that might seem extraordinary to others. The auditorium buzzed with agreement. Suddenly, aliens who had been afraid to approach her were crowding around, eager to share their own stories and experiences. As the event finally came to a close, Zoe found herself face to face with High Counselor Selfor, the very being her mother had terrified with a handshake all those months ago. Young human. Zelthor's skin shimmered with what Zoe now recognized as respect. You have done more for interstellar relations in one day than our diplomats have managed in decades. Perhaps it's time we reconsidered our approach to humanity. Zoe grinned. Well, Counselor, I have an idea about that. How would you feel about expanding the exchange program? Not just one human on an alien world, but a true cultural exchange across the galaxy. Zelthor's form pulsed with excitement. An intriguing proposal, but surely your people would be hesitant after the misunderstandings we've had. Oh, I don't know, Zoe chuckled. I think there are plenty of humans who'd jump at the chance to experience life on other worlds. We're a curious bunch, you know. Just promise them some good coffee and interesting conversation, and you'll have volunteers lining up around the block. As they began to discuss the logistics of a broader exchange program, Zoe couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had come to this alien world hoping to bridge the gap between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. It hadn't gone at all how she'd expected, but somehow, through all the chaos and misunderstandings, connections had been forged. Looking out over the auditorium, now abuzz with excited chatter as aliens of all shapes and sizes exchanged stories and ideas, Zoe realized something profound. In the end, it wasn't humanity's strength or resilience or adaptability that had impressed the galactic community. It was simply their humanity, in all its complex, contradictory, beautifully ordinary glory. As she imagined a future where humans and aliens lived, worked, and learned side by side, Zoe couldn't help but smile. The road ahead might be long and filled with more misunderstandings, but for the first time since she'd arrived on this alien world, she felt truly hopeful. After all, if a girl from Earth could survive a semester of being seen as a super-powered alien, Surely the rest of humanity could handle a little interstellar cultural exchange. And who knew? Maybe someday, in the not-too-distant future, humans and aliens alike would look back on these early misadventures and laugh, sharing stories over a cup of coffee, or whatever the alien equivalent might be. The universe, Zoe decided, was a big, weird, wonderful place, and humanity, in all its ordinary extraordinariness, was finally ready to take its place among the stars.